This billboard near Kauffman Stadium could have All-Star fans doing a double take. It claims hot dogs are as dangerous to your health as cigarettes.
You have been eating hot dogs your whole life? At ballparks, at backyard cookouts, at county fairs, where the smell alone pulls you toward the grill before your brain even registers the decision. The brands selling them know exactly how deep that comfort runs. And they have been counting on it to keep you from asking the one question that changes everything. What is actually inside that casing? 8 brands, 7 safer options. Let's end the silence. 8. Ballpark Franks. This one is going to sting, not because Ballpark is the worst offender on this list. They are not. But because Ballpark built their entire brand identity on a specific sensory promise, and the reality of what produces that experience is something their marketing has carefully kept you from visualizing. The famous snap. The plump, satisfying pop when you bite down on a Ballpark Frank at a stadium or off a backyard grill. That texture is real. The question is, what produces it? Ballpark Franks are mechanically separated chicken and pork, a process where carcass remnants are forced under pressure through a sieve so fine it strips the last traces of usable meat off bones that no butcher would touch. The resulting paste is then combined with sodium phosphates, corn syrup, and sodium nitrite, a preservative with a documented connection to the formation of nitrosamines during high-heat cooking. Specifically the grilling you are almost certainly doing this summer. The sodium content is significant. One Frank contains roughly 570 milligrams of sodium, which is nearly a quarter of the daily recommended limit before you have added the bun, the ketchup, or the second one you will almost certainly eat. Ballpark's parent company, Hillshire Brands, was acquired by Tyson Foods in 2014 for $8.5 billion. The acquisition merged the nation's most recognized hot dog brand with the nation's largest meat processor, a company with its own long and documented history of food safety issues that we will address as this list continues. Ballpark lands at 8 because what they are doing is industry standard, not outlier behavior. The mechanically separated process, the nitrite preservatives, the sodium levels. Every brand on this worst list does some version of this. Ballpark just made more money on the smile and the snap than almost anyone else. If the brand you trusted most at the ballpark already has you questioning the snap, the next one has been hiding something far more specific behind a name that sounds like it belongs in a butcher shop window. 7. Nathan's Famous. Nathan's Famous was founded on Coney Island in 1916 by a Polish immigrant named Nathan Handwerker, who sold his wife's recipe for a nickel. That story is still on the website. The Coney Island footage is still in the commercials. The original location is still operating. The mythology is intact and aggressively maintained. What is also intact is the ingredient list that mythology conveniently never mentions. Nathan's Franks contain mechanically separated turkey in addition to pork, corn syrup, sodium phosphate, and sodium diacetate. The corn syrup is not incidental. It is a deliberate sweetness additive in a product whose entire brand promise is that it tastes like the real thing from the real place. Adding sweetener to a hot dog and marketing the result as authentic New York street food is a specific kind of storytelling that the original Nathan Handwerker, selling his wife's recipe for a nickel on the boardwalk, would probably find confusing. The sodium count runs approximately 550 milligrams per frank, nearly identical to Ballpark, but Nathan's charges more per package by leaning on heritage branding while delivering an industrial product. You are paying a premium for the Coney Island story and receiving a heavily processed frank with corn syrup inside the casing. The bigger issue is the current ownership structure. Nathan's Famous is now primarily a licensing operation. The company licenses its name to Smithfield Foods for the retail hot dogs you buy in the supermarket. Smithfield is owned by WH Group, a Chinese conglomerate that acquired it in 2013 in the largest acquisition of an American company by a Chinese firm in history at the time. The Coney Island origin story and the current supply chain have essentially nothing to do with each other. If the gap between a heritage brand story and what is actually inside the casing has your attention, the next entry on this list did not just stretch that gap. They collapsed it entirely and got caught doing it on video. 6. Oscar Mayer. 140 years of American breakfast tables, lunchboxes, and backyard cookouts. The Wienermobile, I. The jingle your parents sang and you sang and your kids will probably sing. Oscar Mayer is not a hot dog brand. It is a piece of American childhood infrastructure, which is precisely why what is inside their classic Franks deserves your full attention. Oscar Mayer. Classic wieners contain mechanically separated turkey, pork, chicken, and water as the first 4 ingredients. The 5th is corn syrup, the 7th is sodium phosphate, the 8th is sodium nitrite. This is a hot dog manufactured from the lowest cost combination of mechanically separated poultry and pork trimmings available, sweetened, preserved with nitrites, and sold inside one of the most recognizable brand wrappers in the history of American food marketing. In 2015, Kraft Heinz, then the new parent company formed by the merger of Kraft and Heinz, under 3G Capital and Berkshire Hathaway backing, wrote down the value of the Oscar Mayer brand by $2.5 billion. That is not a product line stumble. That is the parent company formally acknowledging in financial documents that the brand they just acquired was worth substantially less than what the balance sheet had been claiming. The Wienermobile kept driving. The jingle kept playing. The write-down was not in the commercial. The more recent record includes a 2023 recall of Oscar Mayer turkey bacon. Over listeria concerns, a separate issue from the hot dog line, but a meaningful data point about quality control under Kraft Heinz management. A corporation that has already told its own investors the brand is worth $2.5 billion less than advertised, is also the corporation deciding how carefully the hot dog line is being produced. Oscar Mayer lands at 6 because 140 years of brand trust has been systematically monetized by private equity-backed ownership that has already marked the asset down and kept selling it to you at full nostalgic price. If financial engineering applied to an American childhood institution offends you, the next entry on this list took financial engineering and added a specific lawsuit detail about what was found inside the product that will make you rethink every summer cookout you have ever planned. 5. Hebrew National. Hebrew National built their brand on a single, brilliant, irreplaceable promise. We answer to a higher authority. It was not just a slogan, it was a covenant. The suggestion that kosher certification, with its stricter standards and religious oversight, produced a fundamentally cleaner, more trustworthy hot dog than anything else on the supermarket shelf. For decades, millions of consumers, Jewish and non-Jewish alike, paid a premium for that promise and meant it. In 2012, a class action lawsuit was filed against ConAgra Foods, which owns Hebrew National, alleging that the kosher certification on the label was essentially fraudulent. The lawsuit described specific conditions inside the certified plants: diseased animals, improperly inspected cattle, and processing that allegedly did not meet the standards the certification claimed. The suit was seeking $180 million in damages. ConAgra denied the allegations. The case was ultimately dismissed on procedural grounds. But the specific allegations in the filing, the descriptions of what plaintiffs alleged they witnessed inside a plant selling product under a higher authority certification, were detailed, signed, and submitted to a federal court. That is not a rumor. That is a legal document. The sodium content in Hebrew National Franks runs approximately 460 milligrams per franc, which is lower than Ballpark and Oscar Mayer. The ingredient list is cleaner. The kosher supply chain, even contested, does involve additional oversight layers that conventional hot dog production does not. These are genuine advantages. But a brand whose entire market position rests on a trust premium, and whose trust premium faced a federal lawsuit alleging that premium was manufactured, has an obligation to answer those allegations more thoroughly than a denial and a procedural dismissal. Hebrew National lands at 5 because when the higher authority is the entire value proposition, the question of whether that authority was honored deserves a cleaner answer than the record currently provides. If a trust premium built on religious certification and then challenged in federal court keeps you up at night, the next entry has something more immediate: a 2025 health inspection record that reads like it was written about a different industry entirely. 4. Sabrett. If you have ever eaten a hot dog from a New York City street cart, you have almost certainly eaten a sabrett. The blue and yellow umbrella is so embedded in the visual identity of the city that it functions as furniture. Tourists photograph it. Films use it as shorthand for New York. It is not just a hot dog brand, it is urban infrastructure. Here is what the infrastructure contains. Sabret franks are manufactured using mechanically separated chicken, pork, beef, and water, with corn syrup, sodium phosphate, and sodium nitrite following close behind. The beef is not the primary protein, it is listed third. The primary proteins are mechanically separated chicken and pork, the same industrial paste and press process described earlier on this list, dressed in a casing that sits under an umbrella that the whole world assumes represents something genuine about New York. The street cart distribution model creates a specific food safety challenge that Sabret's brand identity obscures rather than addresses. Temperature maintenance on a cart operating in New York City in July, under full sun, through a 12-hour street vendor shift, is not equivalent to a restaurant kitchen with a working refrigeration system and a scheduled health inspection. The New York City Department of Health has cited individual Sabret cart operators repeatedly for temperature violations and improper food storage. The same bacterial growth zone violations that appeared on this list at the Wingstop entry in the fried chicken ranking. The difference is that Wingstop at least has a building with a health inspection score. The cart does not receive the same systematic scrutiny. It receives the assumption of New York authenticity, which is not a food safety standard. Sabret lands at 4 because serving a mechanically separated chicken and pork product under the visual branding of authentic New York street food in a distribution environment with meaningful temperature control challenges is a combination that the blue and yellow umbrella was specifically designed to prevent you from thinking about. If a beloved street food institution with a documented gap between brand story and product reality has your attention, the next entry is about to show you what happens when industrial hot dog production meets one of the most documented quality scandals in modern food manufacturing history. 3. Tyson Foods. Hot dogs. Tyson Foods is the largest meat processor in the United States. They also, after acquiring Hillshire Brands, became the company behind Ballpark, which is already on this worst list. Tyson's own store brand hot dogs therefore represent the industrial baseline from which even their premium Ballpark line is trying to distinguish itself. Read that sentence again. The Tyson hot dog ingredient panel is one of the most direct windows into what industrial processed meat manufacturing actually produces when no brand heritage is being invoked, no Coney Island mythology is being leveraged, and no higher authority certification is on the label. Mechanically separated chicken, pork, water, corn syrup, sodium phosphate, sodium erythorbate, sodium nitrite. This is the unvarnished list. This is what hot dogs are when no one has paid a marketing agency to tell a story about them. The Tyson corporate safety record adds a layer that their retail products cannot be separated from. In 2020, Tyson Foods faced federal investigations after internal documents surfaced, suggesting that managers at a Waterloo, Iowa plant had organized a betting pool on how many workers would contract COVID-19 while publicly claiming the facility was safe. Over 1,000 workers at that single facility tested positive. Multiple workers died. The plant manager was criminally charged. This is the corporation deciding what goes into the hot dogs. The contamination and quality control issues at Tyson have been documented across multiple product lines and multiple years. In 2023, Tyson recalled 2.1 million pounds of chicken nuggets for possible metal contamination. Hot dogs and chicken nuggets are different product lines. The corporate quality control culture that produces one is the same culture managing the other. If the largest meat processor in America, with the specific corporate record described above, producing a hot dog that is mechanically separated chicken and pork with corn syrup, concerns you, the entry sitting at number 2 has a lawsuit with details so specific about what was allegedly inside the casing that they have been circulating in food safety circles since the filing was first made public. 2. Vienna beef. Vienna beef is, for many people, the most sacred name on this entire list. Authentic Chicago hot dog. Never ketchup. The specific snap of a natural casing Frank steamed and dragged through the garden. An identity so specific and so fiercely defended by Chicagoans that challenging it feels less like a food criticism and more like a regional insult. Make it anyway because the record requires it. Vienna beef's natural casing franks are a genuinely different product from the mechanically separated chicken paste that populates the lower end of this list. The ingredients are real. The natural casing produces a textural experience that artificial casings cannot replicate. The brand's commitment to the Chicago style is authentic, in a way that Nathan's commitment to Coney Island is not. The problem is the sodium. A single Vienna beef frank contains approximately 580 milligrams of sodium. That is before the yellow mustard, the sport peppers, the celery salt, and the pickle spear. A Chicago dog assembled correctly and eaten at a proper Chicago speed, meaning multiple franks across a game or an afternoon, can deliver well over 2,000 milligrams of sodium before dinner. The American Heart Association recommends no more than 2,300 milligrams per day for adults and significantly less for anyone with cardiovascular risk factors. The deeper concern is the nitrite question. Vienna beef uses sodium nitrite as a preservative. During grilling and high-heat cooking, nitrites can react with proteins to form nitrosamines, compounds that multiple health agencies have flagged as probable human carcinogens. Vienna beef and every brand on this list will tell you the levels are within regulatory limits. Regulatory limits are not the same as zero risk. Vienna beef lands at 2, not because they are the worst product on this list, they are genuinely not. They land here because their brand commands the highest level of trust among the most passionate consumer base of any entry on this worst list, and that trust has never been subjected to the scrutiny the product's actual nutritional profile deserves. The chain at number 1 did not arrive at the top of this list by accident. They arrived because scale, corporate negligence, and a documented pattern of specific violations across multiple years formed a picture that no patriotic branding could honestly cover. 1. Oscar Mayer Beef Franks by Kraft Heinz. We already covered the classic Oscar Mayer wiener at number 6. The beef frank deserves its own entry at number 1, and the distinction matters because this is the product sold as the premium option, the cleaner, more honest, more trustworthy choice within the Oscar Mayer line. All beef, no mechanically separated poultry, a product pitched directly at the consumer who read the classic wiener label, felt uneasy, and reached for what they assumed was the better version on the same shelf. The beef frank is better in some specific ways. No mechanically separated turkey. No mechanically separated chicken. The protein source is beef, which is what the label says. But sodium nitrite is still present. Corn syrup is still present. Sodium phosphate is still present. And the parent company making the quality control decisions is still Kraft Heinz, the 3G capital-backed entity that already wrote the brand down by $2.5 billion, that oversaw the 2023 turkey bacon listeria recall, and whose approach to the Oscar Mayer asset has been documented in financial terms as extraction rather than investment. In 2019, Kraft Heinz announced that the Securities and Exchange Commission was investigating their accounting practices. The company took a $15.4 billion write-down in the same quarter, one of the largest in consumer packaged goods history. They had inflated the value of their brands, including Oscar Mayer, beyond what the underlying business supported. The investigation resulted in a formal SEC settlement in 2021. Kraft Heinz neither admitted nor denied the findings and paid a $62 million penalty. $62 million is a serious number to most people. To a company reporting annual revenues exceeding $26 billion, it is a compliance expense. It changes nothing about the hot dogs. The all-beef Oscar Mayer Frank lands at number 1 on this worst list because it is the product that specifically targets the consumer who is trying to make a more informed choice, and then delivers a Kraft Heinz manufactured nitrite-preserved corn syrup-containing product. Under a brand whose value its own parent company formally inflated, formally misrepresented to investors, and formally settled with federal regulators over. You did your research. You reached for the better option. They were counting on exactly that. The 7 safer options. 7 brands earned a place on this list, not because they are perfect, not because every product is flawless, but because the documented evidence of how they source, how they process, and how they respond when something goes wrong puts them in a genuinely different category from everything above them. 7. Applegate Naturals. No antibiotics ever. No artificial nitrites. No added hormones. Applegate publishes these commitments plainly, without lawyer-engineered phrasing and without footnotes that create exceptions large enough to drive an industrial chicken truck through. The beef and pork used in Applegate hot dogs comes from animals raised without antibiotics, a standard verified by third-party certification rather than internal brand claims. The honest caveat is that Applegate was acquired by Hormel Foods in 2015. Hormel is a conventional meat processor with its own mixed record. The acquisition created real concern among Applegate's original consumer base about whether the standards would hold under corporate ownership. 5 years post-acquisition, the certifications have remained intact, and the sourcing standards have not visibly degraded. That is a meaningful data point. The concern about long-term standard drift under Hormel ownership is legitimate and worth monitoring. But the current product earns its place at 7. 6. Neiman Ranch. Neiman Ranch sources exclusively from a network of independent family farms operating under a specific animal husbandry protocol that prohibits antibiotics, growth hormones, and gestation crates. The Franks are uncured, meaning no added sodium nitrite, instead using celery powder as a natural curing agent, a distinction that carries genuine nutritional meaning. The supply chain transparency is real. Neiman Ranch publishes their farmer network and their protocols. Like Applegate, Neiman Ranch has been acquired by a larger corporation, in this case Purdue Farms, in 2015. The farm protocols have remained in place post-acquisition. The price point is higher than every brand on the worst list. For a product where the sourcing standard is the entire value proposition, the price reflects actual production cost rather than heritage mythology applied to industrial manufacturing. 5. Welshire Farms. Welshire Farms is certified organic, which means the USDA is verifying the claims rather than the brand making them unilaterally. No antibiotics, no synthetic hormones, no artificial preservatives. Celery juice as the curing agent in place of sodium nitrite. The sodium content in Welshire products is still meaningful, running approximately 400 milligrams per franc. It is lower than the worst list entries but not negligible. Welshire is not a zero-compromise product. It is a meaningfully better product within the realistic constraints of what a shelf-stable franc requires. Organic certification from a government body rather than a brand press release is a different category of claim, and that category distinction earns Welshire a place at 5. 4. Pedersen's Natural Farms. Pedersen's Natural Farms produces a Whole30 approved sugar-free hot dog, a designation that eliminates corn syrup entirely, which puts them in a category that most brands on the worst list cannot enter. No added sugar, no antibiotics, no nitrites, humanely raised pork. The Whole30 approval is a third-party verification of the no added sugar claim, not just a label choice. For consumers specifically managing blood sugar, insulin response, or dietary sugar elimination, Pedersen's occupies a category that the entire worst list fails to reach. The flavor profile is different from a conventional frank, closer to a bratwurst in texture and seasoning profile than a classic American hot dog. Whether that is a limitation or a feature depends entirely on what you are looking for, but the ingredient commitment is real. 3. Belinsky's produces chicken sausages and chicken dogs using humanely raised antibiotic-free chicken with ingredient panels clean enough to read out loud without pausing. No fillers, no artificial preservatives, no mechanically separated anything. The brand is family-owned, which creates the same structural insulation from financial extraction that founder ownership provides in other categories. No private equity target, no quarterly earnings call driving cost reduction decisions in the ingredient room. Belinsky's makes chicken franks that taste like chicken because there is no industrial processing architecture between the animal and the casing. 2. 365 by Whole Foods Market. Whole Foods house brand. Hot dogs carry both USDA organic certification and no antibiotics ever standard, verified through the retailer's own supplier audit system. The 365 brand exists because the retailer staked its entire market position on ingredient quality. which means a quality failure in the house brand is a reputational failure for the whole store, not just a single product SKU. That alignment of incentives matters. Kraft Heinz has no incentive to make the Oscar Mayer beef Frank better, because the brand has already been written down, and the primary strategic objective is margin extraction. Whole Foods has a direct financial incentive to make the 365 franchise better, because every 365 product that fails is a vote against the store. Different ownership model, different incentive structure, different products. 1. Boar's Head. Boar's Head lands here because their sourcing commitment is specific, detailed, and verifiable without a law degree. No fillers, no byproducts, no artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives. Pork and beef raised without antibiotics. A Frank that delivers a real meat product with a clean ingredient panel at a price point that does not require a specialty grocery store trip. The honest caveat is significant. In 2024, a Boar's Head facility in Virginia was linked to a listeria outbreak that killed 9 people and sickened 59 across 18 states. The outbreak involved the liverwurst line, not the Frank line, but the facility and the quality control failure behind it belonged to the same corporate operation managing all Boar's Head products. The company recalled the product, cooperated with investigators, and permanently closed the Virginia facility. Appropriate response. But an appropriate response to a crisis that killed 9 people is not the same as the crisis not having happened. Boar's Head lands at number 1 on the safer list because their ingredient standard and sourcing commitment are the closest thing in this category to what a hot dog is supposed to be. The 2024 outbreak is the reason that position comes with full disclosure rather than a celebration. The 8 worst counted on the name, the jingle, the umbrella, and the mythology being strong enough that you never looked at the panel. The 7 safer ones are proof that you do not have to choose between a hot dog this summer and a product worth eating. Now you know which is which. Use it every single time you fire up the grill. Thanks for watching. If you found this hot dog breakdown helpful, let us know in the comments. Want to see the complete guide on how we ranked every major fast food burger chain, from the industrial ground beef disasters at the bottom to the chains actually worth pulling over for? Click on the next video on the left. And if you do not want to miss more breakdowns like this one, hit that subscribe button.